from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for March 18, 2010, the 27th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. Here are your hosts.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Wandy Lawson. Susan Hoffman has the day off. Coming up on tonight's program, a constitutional amendment aimed at thwarting the federal health care legislation that comes through in the Senate. We also tonight have zero tolerance legislation clearing the Senate, and regional transportation funding takes an important step as it clears a House committee. But first, our top story tonight: the Senate passes a measure making it illegal to text while driving. And the Senate today passes a bill making it illegal for teens to text while driving. That measure is named in honor of a young man who was actually a victim of this texting while driving. We're going to go live to the Capitol, where Valerie Edwards has the latest on the passage of the measure. Valerie.
And Wandy, thank you very much. Caleb Sorahan died when he was just 18 years old when the car he was driving struck another vehicle because he was texting while driving. The bill sponsor, Senator Jack Murphy, hopes the bill will save lives. He's joined by Caleb's classmates, along with Caleb's mother, Mandy, and his 17-year-old sister, Alex.
The bill was passed for one reason: to stop texting while driving. That's the whole point of the bill, and it's to give you an opportunity to talk to your kids and not only say, I don't want you texting now. They can say, I don't want you texting and driving because it's against the law.
I want them to know that a text message is not worth your life. Pull over to the side of the road, wait 5 minutes, wait 2 minutes. It's not worth losing your life over.
You don't want to risk losing your friends, your brothers, your sisters, even your parents, just because they were texting and driving. And not only are they going to lose their lives, but they might kill someone else. And it's not worth it just to get a text message.
The Caleb Sorahan Act for Saving Lives while Preventing Texting While Driving, SB 360, now goes over to the House. Under the measure, any teen convicted of texting while driving would lose their Class C license for at least a year and have to pay a $150 fine. Reporting live for Lawmakers, I'm Valerie Edwards.
Thanks so much, Valerie. The Senate today votes to remove the criminal penalties on students who bring weapons to school if they do not commit acts of violence. Senator Emanuel Jones' legislation he actually led the passage of Senate Bill 299. That's a change to the state's zero tolerance law. He says the measure gives local school systems more opportunities to practice common sense.
By changing the law, the criminal law, it should be apparent to all the school systems out there that the punishment is no longer the same. I heard from a teacher who was the principal at Oglethorpe High School. This teacher was fired, suspended, because he failed to report a little box knife that a kid had brought to school 2 weeks shy of his graduation. The kid was 17 years old at the time. Had that principal reported, this kid wouldn't have graduated, would have lost his scholarship, and this kid would have been kicked out of school 2 weeks prior to graduation. Because he didn't, the principal lost his job, and now he's fighting for his accreditation and to keep his license. So that law cuts both ways. There was no discretion whatsoever.
Senate Bill 299 passed the Senate by a vote of 47-0 and now moves to the House. Well, it was another slow day on the House floor. There was very little debate until the final bill of the day. House Bill 1144 would give juvenile felons credit for the time served while they are awaiting sentencing against their sentence. For more on that, let's go back to Valerie Edwards. She's still standing by live at the Capitol. Valerie.
And Wandy, House Bill 1144 passed, but not before Representative Earl Earhart led an attempt to vote the bill down. That was after the bill's sponsor, Representative Mary Margaret Oliver, stated her case.
Policy consideration to treat youthful offenders more seriously than you do adult offenders. But more importantly, perhaps, in this day and time, this is a cost-saving bill that is brought to us by the Department of Juvenile Justice based on their budget requirements that we are imposing on all agencies.
Representative Earhart tried to amend the bill before arguing against it.
Listen, the judges know in the juvenile court, when they sentence these individuals, what the time served is.
Because the bill was heard under the modified open rule, all amendments had to be submitted to the House an hour before the bill was taken up. It is a rule Earhart leveraged when he was chair of the House Rules Committee. In a bit of irony, presiding Speaker Jan Jones ruled the amendment out of order because of the rule. House Bill 1144 passed 118 votes to 34. Procedural rules also led to some debate over Senate Bill 370. The bill requires the Department of Natural Resources to reassess its water policies. Minority Leader DeBose Porter took issue with the bill's route to the House floor.
This bill came from the Senate and went directly to rules rather than natural resources. And there was going to be an understanding that bills of substance would go to the committee with regard to the subject of the bill, and by going to rules, bypass that.
Majority Leader Jerry Keene had sharp words for his counterpart.
As far as the process goes, this bill was brought to the floor for debate. Anyone that wished to sign up and speak to the measure had ample opportunity during today's debate to go up, sign up, and speak to the bill.
Senate Bill 370 passed 153 votes to 8. And the House also passed new license plate bills. Enthusiasts of Zoo Atlanta may soon be able to own a plate with an image of a giant panda. And the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, one of the nation's oldest historically black sororities, will soon have its own license plate. That is, if the Senate approves the measure the House voted for today. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Valerie Edwards for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Valerie. Well, while the House was passing the governor's water plan, the Senate agreed today to allow private operations of reservoirs under certain circumstances. Some senators questioned Senator Chip Pearson about whether Senate Bill 321 takes away too much power from local governments.
By virtue of the fact that the withdrawal permit for this water would have to come through the EPD, it would then have to be shown that there is a necessary need, and they would issue that based upon the need of that county, that city, or that local water authority. So indirectly, yes, they have that veto power.
Is that my third question?
I'll give you 3.5 if it's short.
So you don't think that if a county or city wanted to stop the reservoir, you think they would be able to stop it, in your opinion?
Yeah, they could stop it at numerous instances. So can the state, so can another authority. The fact of the matter is this bill is help for counties and cities. And we're trying to give them tools, if you would, in the toolbox, not take away a local governing authority to determine what happens in the county.
The measure was amended to prevent land seized through eminent domain from being transferred to private companies. SB 321 passed 30-15 and now moves to the House. A group of rural legislators from northeast Georgia want to limit basin-to-basin water transfers. Representative Alan Powell says that Metro Atlanta has no right to water from his district if the transfer could have negative impacts on his constituents.
We certainly don't mind working on issues that affect the state as a whole, but there needs to be a system in place to guarantee that if water transfers ever do take place, or they take place, that there's a system in place for the permitting, for the notification to the people of the basin from where water is transferred.
Representative Powell was asked about the timing of the bill. The measure was introduced and the Natural Resources Committee doesn't have any more meetings before crossover day.
We have concerns that this water bill was not placed in the standard subcommittee to be heard to where they are normally heard. There is time for this session for this issue to be brought out and properly debated and perfected, and we think this is a time.
Now, under normal rules, all bills must work their way through the chamber of their origin by Legislative Day 30, or they will not be taken up by the opposite chamber. Crossover Day is scheduled for next week. The House Transportation Committee today approved a 1% sales tax increase to fund transportation improvements, containing the provision the governor said he did not want to see. Lawmakers' Valerie Edwards has more. Valerie.
And Wandy, the governor said he would veto any House Bill 1211, if it contained a provision giving regions or counties a way to opt out of imposing an additional 1% sales tax increase. It was a point reiterated at the start of today's meeting by the House floor leader.
If the intergovernmental agreement's regional impasse stays in the bill, the governor will veto it And for whatever it's worth, there's only 3 of us, but I nor any of the floor leaders can support it on the floor if it stays in its current form.
Amendments to the House Transportation Act of 2010 took up most of today's 3-hour meeting. The vote itself, however, went rather quickly, and the measure passed the committee unanimously. It did, however, contain a provision giving counties and regions a chance to say no thank you to a 1% sales tax hike, the one thing the governor said he didn't want to see. Here's the governor's floor leader responding to the measure's passage.
Governor Perdue's stance is the ultimate opt-out, is the people of Georgia. That is the ultimate opt-out. When a list is presented to them for a statewide transportation plan, and that's really the ultimate decision of anything we do in politics, is the final decision by the voters of this people to either send representatives to Atlanta or to vote on local issues or a statewide transportation plan.
In other House transportation news, mixed results for a pair of Metro Atlanta transit systems. First up, MARTA. Relief for the beleaguered system will have to wait as a handful of amendments failed, including one by Representative Pat Gardner, requiring neighboring counties to commit 50% of any special tax proceeds to developing mass transit.
You know, for this regional tax to pass in our district, there has to be some solution to what dilemma MARTA is in.
Turning now to Clayton County, where funding for their bus system runs out at the end of this month. The House Transportation Committee today approved an amendment to allow Clayton County to raise its sales tax cap. Representative Roberta Abdul Salam described the situation in Clayton County as desperate.
There are at least 9,000 people riding C-Tran every day, 2.5 million a year. Just imagine those people not being able to go to work, not being able to go to school. 61% of these people, 65, have no other means of transportation, none.
Again, the House Transportation Committee has approved the Transportation Investment Act of 2010. It now goes on to House rules despite the ongoing threat of veto for the governor. And more transportation news, this time from the Senate. Today, the Senate approved by 37-9 a measure giving Clayton, Gwinnett, and Cobb County an opportunity to expand MARTA trains to those counties without losing bus service. Reporting live for Lawmakers, I'm Valerie Edwards.
All right, thanks for that report, Valerie. You know, in other news today, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, Speaker of the House David Ralston, and members of the Republican caucus from both chambers today announced legislation to create a tax overhaul commission that could include Governor Sonny Perdue and former Governor Zell Miller. Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers said House Bill 1405 is long overdue.
We have a broken property tax system that's the relic of a 19th century agrarian economy. We have a personal income tax system that is so closely tied with unemployment figures that just when Georgians are hurting, the state budget hurts as well. A personal income tax system whose top rate is higher than what it is in Massachusetts. We have a corporate income tax system that discourages companies from locating in Georgia. And we have a sales tax system that exempts more products and services than it actually taxes. I think as you look across Georgia's tax system, I don't think anyone would agree this is a tax system that is good for a 21st century economy. So what we certainly hope comes out of this commission and out of the General Assembly next year is a tax system that promotes growth, that helps grow our economy, and doesn't stand in the way of those things that we know work: entrepreneurship, hard work, and rewarding people who take those risks.
Meanwhile, Democratic leadership, including notably gubernatorial candidate Representative DuBose Porter, are decrying this plan for placing legislative responsibility in the hands of an outside counsel. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle says these allegations are outrageous.
Obviously, most of the Democrats' solutions that I have been witnessing over the years has been simply about raising taxes. And obviously this majority that you have is about lowering taxes. And we have focused on the certainty piece of the ledger, and that is on expenditures, not on the revenue side.
The next governor is going to be left with a lot of problems that this administration is leaving down the road. They want water to be decided in 2012. They want transportation to be decided in 2012. And now they form a commission to make decisions a couple of years down the road. That doesn't do the immediate fiscal crisis any good.
House Bill 1405 is currently in the House Ways and Means Committee. Leadership says that recommendations from that committee will be available by the start of the next legislative session. Well, one day after his proposal to allow Georgia voters to opt out of the federal health care plan went down in defeat in the Senate, Senator Judson Hill today led the passage of Senate Bill 317, which he says gives the state's residents more choice when it comes to choosing insurance options and health care providers.
Pass, you could choose anything you can today. You could choose private health insurance, stay on a government plan, or choose a federal government plan that if such were to pass.
Further you?
I do.
But, Senator, in effect, and this is what I'm wondering about, in effect, aren't you really facilitating what you're against by making that permissive?
I'm sorry about that. Senator Hill did finish by saying that he was giving more options to consumers there. Did not agree with Senator Thompson's assertion that he was, in fact, limiting those. Senate Bill 317 did pass by a vote of 31 to... it did pass by a vote of 31 to 16. Earlier, the Senate voted to reconsider its action in failing to pass Senate Resolution 794 yesterday. That measure was returned to Senate rules. Now, a bill that would offer high school students various diploma tracks was discussed in the House Education Committee today. House Bill 215 was geared toward preparing students for careers, regardless of whether or not they chose to continue to go to college.
You're not less of American if you're not a college graduate. Okay, we've got some fine citizens in the state of Georgia that are tax-paying, law-abiding, quality people that don't have college degrees. And I just encourage us to try and prepare all people in high school for life in the community, not just life in college.
My personal feeling is that we're this, quote, rigorous college prep curriculum we've got is pushing some kids out of school that would stay in school if they had a technical track to follow. I think this is something we really need to consider. But due to the fact we're cutting millions, billions of dollars from education, this is one of the toughest years we've ever faced. We're trying to get so much flexibility, more flexibility than we've ever given to school system. You know what we've done with 908, with what we're doing. And now we're getting ready to mandate something for next year that they're going to have to print more diplomas, realign the curriculum, State Department asking them to do a lot of things, especially with the governors, pay for performance looking at maybe coming down, a lot of stuff that's on the horizon. I don't know if this is the right time to do it. And that's one reason that I was concerned about this.
Now, House Education Committee Chairman Brooks Coleman says that HB 215 will not be voted on this session, but he plans to bring it back up next year. And since it's the end of another legislative week, it means it's time to check in with Tom Crawford of the Georgia Report. I began today by talking to Tom about the proposed House Bill 1405, what it might mean for tax overhaul in the state.
The House and the Senate leadership are both making a rare show of unity here, and they agree that some changes need to be made in the state's tax system. It's got a little imbalanced over the year, I think it would be safe to say, and they want to take a complete look at it from top to bottom, see what changes they could make that might make it a little fair and equitable and help them ride out the next recession a little bit better than they did this one. They're going to take an approach very similar to the base closing, military base closing approach used by Congress, where they come back with a list of recommendations, send it straight to the House and Senate, and let them either vote for it or against it. No amendments. So it's a new approach here, and who knows, it might come up with some real good changes in the tax structure.
More immediately, though, we're looking at, of course, a very large budget deficit at this particular point, and yet not a lot of news this week about the budget. What are you hearing as far as the movement of the plan?
Things were very quiet on most of the legislative front this week on a very important part of the budget, which is the hospital tax that Governor Perdue has proposed, a 1.6% tax. I'm hearing from my sources that some of the state's hospitals are now moving into line behind Governor Perdue. That might give him the support he needs to finally get that pushed through. So if that can get approval, that's a very important piece of the budget, and they need all the good news they can get, quite frankly.
Of course, last week we were hearing a lot about perhaps potential fee increases and what that might mean to closing the budget shortfall. Haven't heard a lot about it this week, but are those plans making any movement?
No movement so far, but they're still on track to happen, and I think at the end of the day, you will see fees raised to bring in about $100 to $200 million for the budget. That's still going to happen. It just didn't happen this week.
And the House Transportation Committee meeting today, having a big vote, but I don't know whether it's going to mean a new transportation plan for the state.
That thing looks like it might be headed for the junk heap unless somebody can figure out how to keep it in the road. The House Transportation Committee did indeed vote it out, but the governor's floor leader said they are not happy with some of the amendments that were put into the bill, and he said quite bluntly, the governor's going to veto it if you pass it out in this form, and the committee passed it out in that form. So we're kind of having a game of chicken right now, and we'll see which car gets pushed off the road first.
So I guess the House really wanting to cling to the idea of giving some local control regarding the potential for a tax, a T-SPLOST in any region.
Yes, it comes back to the opt-out provision where if a local region either cannot agree on a list of road projects or just doesn't want to have a tax referendum, they don't hold one, and Governor Perdue has said that's not acceptable to me. We need to take a statewide focus here, and we need to have votes all over the state on our transportation infrastructure.
You know, we've seen quite a bit of conservation and water legislation kind of making its way through the General Assembly this year, and a big plan for water renewal in the state going through as well.
We did have some good news there today. The water conservation bill that the governor proposed got final passage in the House. It is now headed to Governor Perdue, and I'm sure he will sign it within a day or two. There's still another issue of interbasin transfers of water where the rural areas are trying to protect their water supplies from being diverted to metro Atlanta, but that will have to be fought another day.
All right. Well, we want to thank you, Tom Crawford. We always appreciate your insights as we reach the end of another legislative week.
Thank you for having me.
Meanwhile, a bill intended to ensure that employers verify employment of new hires was considered by the Senate Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee today. Senate Bill 460 would require contractors and subcontractors of public employers to participate in federal work authorization programs. Lawmakers Adam Bridges reports.
This says we want everyone to be in compliance with the law, like in any other law, but also there are some stiff penalties if you're not.
Two major concerns were pointed out over this bill.
And my interest with this bill is to just make sure that we clarify all of the provisions and not complicate anything and make it even harder for cities to comply with these laws.
We don't have a problem at all being held accountable for those things that we can control and are responsible for, but do have a problem being held accountable and responsible for those things we can't control.
At the end of the meeting, Senator Hill agreed to adjust some of the penalties enumerated in the bill.
So the first tier would be if they're in violation of their compliance, we get them back in compliance. Subsequently, the next year, if they do it again, then we do impose a penalty.
After some minor adjustments to Senate Bill 460 are made, the Senate committee will meet again sometime next week. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Adam Bridges.
And now, in honor of our 40th season on the air, time for another Lawmakers flashback. Tonight, Speaker Tom Murphy exchanges fire with House Minority Whip Earl Earhart and House Minority Leader Robert A. Ervin over a tax bill amendment. This is from 1995.
What began as debate of an economic development bill turned into a lively disagreement over a Republican effort to amend that bill. Then Minority Whip Representative Earl Earhart amended the bill to include a provision to eliminate the state sales tax on groceries.
4 years and 30 days. This is
Actively appeal to the chair.
Stand by,
And although we know that you enjoy those flashbacks every night, we do apologize for the technical difficulties with that one. I will let you know that despite Speaker Murphy's fiery ruling on the amendment, HB 336, the underlying tax bill did pass the House. And of course, we got a lot of opportunities to watch Speaker Murphy in action, and we're still getting to watch Representative Earl Earhart doing his thing on the House floor. If you'd like more Lawmakers flashbacks, remember to keep watching the 40th season of Lawmakers. And of course, since we never miss the opportunity for a shameless plug, we're going to bring you news about ourselves now. The Lawmakers production team was honored in the House last week, and today the Senate presented a resolution to the staff in honor of our 40th season. Senate President Pro Tem Tommy Williams presented the resolution to Lawmakers Managing Editor Ashley Wilson.
I'm one who personally believes they do it in a nonpartisan way and a very accurate reporting of. I'd like to say thank you for what you do, and it's a great privilege of ours to honor you today.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it is a genuine pleasure to come to the chamber today to accept this resolution on behalf of our whole production team. My name is Ashley Wilson, and I am the managing editor and executive producer of the Lawmakers program. Joining me here at the rostrum today, we have Lawmakers co-anchor Wandy Lawson, reporter Valerie Edwards, photographer Wesley Nichols, and our multi-talented producer Sammy Jones. Sammy is also our unofficial Lawmakers historian and is responsible for those Lawmakers flashbacks that I know so many of you have been enjoying. And those flashbacks really do illustrate so well why we are so proud to be a part of the 40-year heritage of public service that Lawmakers represents. The program did begin on January 11th of 1971, and it is the longest. The 5 team members.
Of course, we probably need some budget increases to fix those tape machines. Sometimes it feels like we've been here for 40 years in only one day, as Ashley was going on to say that our combined experience here on the show does equal 40 years. The Lawmakers team does genuinely thank the General Assembly for our special honor. And there was more freshman hazing in the House today. Representative Paul Battles made his first trip to the well with a bill that would allow local school boards more flexibility and spending to refurbish buses. I understand that we are going to actually bring you a little more on that story later, but right now we want to go to Ricky Bevington. She's joining us with headlines from all around the state. Ricky, what have you got?
Lots to report tonight. Very good evening, Wendy, and good evening to you. State School Superintendent Kathy Cox says she is confident that Georgia officials made their case to the federal government about why Georgia should get a cut of $4.3 billion in stimulus money. Cox, along with Governor Sonny Perdue, was on a 5-member team that went to Washington, D.C. yesterday. They spoke with panelists who will decide ultimately which states showing innovation in education should get this money. Georgia is a finalist for funding known as Race to the Top, in part because the governor wants pay increases for Georgia teachers to be based on merit. For the first time in nearly a decade, lottery-funded education programs need emergency reserve funds. The Georgia Student Finance Corporation plans to tap into its $900 million savings. Lottery ticket sales are $100 million short on funding pre-kindergarten programs as well as Hope scholarships. The bad economy is hitting small hospitals like one in Millen in East Georgia. Jenkins County has the highest unemployment rate in the state at nearly 22%, and that means fewer people have health insurance to pay for health care in the hospital. Jenkins County Hospital is increasingly treating poor people who can't afford care, and they're absorbing the costs. And of course, that's costing thousands of dollars in shortfalls. And officials there say Jenkins County Hospital already can't afford to do many procedures such as colonoscopies or even minor surgery, and it has laid off all part-time staff. There is more Georgia news at our website. We're at gpb.org. It's right behind me. And you can also follow us on Twitter. We're at GPB News. I'm Ricky Bevington.
Ricky, I'm sure a lot of those regional hospitals taking a look to see what the governor is going to do in terms of the hospital tax, or whether that Medicaid funding is going to be cut. It's going to really hit hospitals like the one you mentioned.
Small rural hospitals are watching very closely. Every penny counts.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ricky.
Thanks so much.
Well, lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow because the Georgia General Assembly will be in recess. We'll return with all the latest from under the Gold Dome Monday night at 7 p.m. If you missed any part of this program, please do tune in tomorrow when lawmakers will repeat at 5:30 a.m. Coming up on GPB, Rick Steves' Mediterranean Mosaic. That program is just terrific, and it's coming up next here on GPB. That's our program for this, the 27th legislative day of the 2010 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wandy Lawson. Please join us Monday, March 22nd for Lawmakers at 7 p.m. here on GPB. Have a great weekend.
Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
And by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.